Black families in America spend more on funerals than almost any other group in the country. And most of those families are doing it with a credit card, a personal loan, or money they absolutely cannot afford to spend. If someone in your family passed away tomorrow, your mom, your dad, your grandmama, do you have the money to bury them? I'm asking, do you have the money? Right now. Today. Because most families don't. And what happens next, when the grief hits and the funeral home hands you a price list? That's where I want to take you today. Because Black families in America spend more on funerals than almost any other group in the country. And most of those families are doing it with a credit card, a personal loan, or money they absolutely cannot afford to spend. And nobody is talking about what that does to the living. The problem. Okay, so let's look at the actual numbers. And I need you to really hear these. The national average cost for a funeral and burial in the United States is about $7,800. That's already a lot of money to pull together in a matter of days. But multiple studies, including data from the National Funeral Directors Association, have found that Black families consistently spend between $12,000 and $19,000. That's not a small gap. That's potentially double what other families spend. Now, and this is important, I'm not here to tell you that's wrong. In Black culture, the homegoing service is sacred. It's the last thing you can do for somebody you love. The flowers. The repast. The white doves if that's your family's tradition. That matters. That's real. What I am here to talk about is how families are paying for it. Because here's where it gets painful. When someone dies, especially unexpectedly, the funeral home doesn't wait. The bill is usually due within days. And grief doesn't come with a pause button for your bank account. So what do most families do? They put it on a credit card. They take out a personal loan. They do a GoFundMe. They borrow from people who can't really afford to lend. And then, months after the burial, the debt is still there. Quietly charging interest. Quietly draining a family that is already grieving. A $15,000 funeral on a credit card, carried for 2 years at 24% interest, doesn't cost $15,000. It costs closer to $18,000 by the time it's paid off. You're paying a grief tax. On top of the funeral. Why it keeps happening? Because it's not like Black families don't love their people. It's not like we don't know funerals cost money. There are 3 real reasons this cycle continues. And none of them are about being irresponsible. Reason 1. The conversation we're not having. In a lot of Black families, talking about death feels like you're inviting it. So we don't talk about it. We don't ask grandma if she has life insurance. We don't ask dad what he wants for his service. We don't find out if there's a policy, a prepaid plan, or anything. And then one day, the call comes. And we're making $15,000 decisions in the worst 72 hours of our life. Avoiding the conversation doesn't protect the family. It just makes the financial crisis worse. Reason 2. The funeral home knows you're grieving. I want to be careful here, because not every funeral home is predatory. But the industry is built around a moment when you are emotionally devastated and time-pressured. And studies have shown, when you're grieving, your ability to comparison shop, read contracts, or negotiate is significantly compromised. You walk in wanting the best for your loved one. You walk out with a package you may not have fully understood. The casket that's $2,200 looks cheap next to the $4,500 one. And in that moment, who's going to choose the cheaper one for their mother? The funeral home isn't manipulating your love. They're just positioned around it. Reason 3. Life insurance is still underused. Here's a fact that should be in every financial literacy class. Only 56% of Black Americans have any life insurance, compared to 68% of white Americans. And even within that 56%, many policies are small whole life policies sold door to door decades ago. Policies worth $5,000 or $10,000 that made sense in 1985 but don't come close to covering a funeral today. And there's a historical reason for that distrust. Companies like Metropolitan Life charged Black policyholders more than white policyholders for the same coverage, for decades. That exploitation is documented. It happened. And the distrust it created is completely legitimate. But here's the thing. The way we protect ourselves from that exploitation today is not by avoiding insurance. It's by understanding it well enough to choose the right product, at the right price. Here's what you actually do about it. Alright. So now that we understand the problem, let's talk about what to actually do. I'm going to give you 4 specific moves. Not vague advice. Actual moves. Move 1. Have the conversation. This week. I know it's uncomfortable. Do it anyway. Call your parent or your grandparent and just ask 2 questions. Do you have life insurance? And do you know where the paperwork is? That's it. You don't have to have the whole conversation in one day. But you need to know the answer to those 2 questions before there's a crisis. If they do have insurance, great. Find out the company name, the policy number, and where to find it. Write it down. Put it somewhere the family knows about. If they don't, that's okay too. Now you know. And now you can do something about it. Move 2. Understand the 3 options. There are 3 main ways families prepare for funeral costs. Let me break them down simply. Option A, burial insurance. Also called final expense insurance. This is a small policy, usually $5,000 to $25,000, designed specifically to cover funeral costs. No medical exam required. Easy to qualify for. A 60-year-old can usually get $15,000 in coverage for around $60 to $90 per month. It's not the cheapest product per dollar of coverage, but for someone older or with health issues, it's often the most accessible. Option B, term life insurance. If you are under 50 and in reasonable health, this is almost always the better move. A $500,000 term life policy for a healthy 35-year-old can cost as little as $25 to $35 per month. That covers the funeral and replaces income and handles other debts. The key is you lock in the rate while you're young and healthy. Option C, funeral pre-planning. This is where you go to a funeral home while everybody is still alive. Choose the casket, the service, the details, and pay for it at today's prices. This is actually brilliant for 2 reasons. 1, you lock in current prices before inflation raises them. 2, you make every decision calmly, without grief clouding your judgment. Your family just shows up on the day. Everything is already handled. Already paid. Pre-planning is the most loving thing you can do for the people you'll leave behind. Move 3. If you're planning a funeral right now, know your rights. If you're in the middle of this right now, first, I'm sorry. And second, here's what you need to know. The FTC's Funeral Rule, which has been federal law since 1984, requires funeral homes to give you an itemized price list when you ask for one. They must allow you to purchase only the items you want, no forced packages. They must accept a casket you purchased elsewhere without charging you a fee for it. And they must give you a written statement of all costs before any agreement is signed. Most families don't know these rights exist. Which means most families don't use them. Which means most families pay more than they have to. You are allowed to say, "Can I see the itemized price list?" You are allowed to say, "We'd like to think about it and call you back." You are allowed to call 2 or 3 funeral homes and compare prices. Grief is not a contract. You have rights. Use them. Move 4. Start a family burial fund today. Even if insurance isn't accessible right now, you can start a dedicated savings fund. Open a separate high-yield savings account, not your regular checking, and call it what it is: the burial fund. If 5 people in a family each put in $50 a month, that's $250 a month. In 5 years, with interest, that's over $15,000. Enough to cover the average black family funeral, in full, without a single dollar borrowed. The conversation is awkward for about 5 minutes. The peace of mind lasts for decades. Look, nobody wants to think about this. I get it. I really do. But here's what I've come to understand. The families who have these conversations, the families who get the policy, do the pre-planning, start the fund. They don't love their people any less than the families who don't. They just refuse to let grief come with a debt attached. And that's what this channel is about. Not just making money. Keeping it. Protecting it. Passing it on. Subscribe and join the movement toward financial freedom, ownership, and generational wealth.